Welcome. We're so glad you're here to join us for Beyond Jam, Preserving Peaches, Plums, and Apricots. Today's program from the Master Food Preserver, I will be MC as Deborah Barger. Today we have our question and answer moderator is Maria Giovanni, and our panelists Rachel Jones, Deirdre Davis, and myself. This program is being recorded and will be posted on our website. A link to a handout with the recipes for this class will be provided to each of you once you submit the post-class Zoom survey. I said, so some Zoom housekeeping. Please keep your mics muted when not speaking. During live questions, unmute and speak or raise your Zoom hand. Look for this icon in the menu bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you don't see Q&A, click the three dots for more. Just as a reminder, during open discussion, just speak up or raise your Zoom hand. Chat is only going to be available one way for us to post, so that you want to use Q&A to communicate with us. So who are we? The UC Master Food Preserver Online Delivery Program is a community outreach, online-based, grant-funded volunteer program within the University of California's Division of Agricultural and Natural Resources. We provide up-to-date, research-based information on food safety and preservation. What is our mission? Our mission is to keep Californians safe and well as they use culturally appropriate, research-based practices to safely preserve food at home, reducing food waste, increasing food security, and provide engaging ways for Californians to explore healthy food. So we are volunteers. That means we don't speak for the University of California. We do not endorse or oppose any specific organization, product, or service on behalf of the UC. Any equipment or product that we show, use, or mention is only for illustration purposes. So today's program, we have 4 stone fruit recipes to share with you. We'll begin with peach butter with Rachel Jones, plum conserves by Deirdre Davis, apricot chipotle sauce with me, Deborah Barger, and then apricot halves. That's our program for today. So before we begin, of course, we always clean. Microorganisms can cause serious problems, accelerated food spoilage, and illness like salmonella or listeria. So we want to clean our work surfaces, and not just the work area, but any surface you may touch. For example, your phone. Tie back your hair if needed, wear an apron, wash your hands. Gather all your utensils, the recipe, and all your ingredients, and then wash your produce. So let's begin today's topic 1, peach butter with Rachel Jones. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Deborah. And thanks for joining us this morning, everyone. So before we get into the peach butter process, I want to share a note about canning peaches. It's really important that you only can yellow peaches for boiling water canning recipes. So when we are doing the boiling water canning, acid is an ingredient that's really important for stopping the growth and the spread of microbacteria and microorganisms that cause spoilage and can lead to illness. So white peaches don't have a sufficient amount of acid to actually do that and make this a safe product. Yellow peaches are acidic enough, so that's what you want to stick to when you are canning. Some other notes for selecting peaches: you want to select fruits that are firm and ripe. Looking at the color on the peaches, you want to see the areas between the red areas be yellow or creamy color. You want to avoid hard peaches that have a green color to them, and avoid overripe peaches and those with bruises or signs of decay. You want to make sure you're putting in the best fruit, because our end product is only going to be as good as the fruit that we're starting with. So now moving on to the recipe. Before you get started, you'll want to gather your tools and ingredients. So a few things that I want to call out. So for this recipe, we do add lemon juice. For some recipes, that lemon juice is added to increase the acidity to a safe level. But for this, since yellow peaches are acidic enough, this lemon juice is just for flavoring. So it's fine to use the zest and juice of a fresh lemon here. A few tools that are helpful for canning. First, you'll see here I have a canning pot listed. So it's actually not necessary to have a specific canning dedicated pot for this process. You just need a pot that's tall enough to get your jars in and get 1 to 2 inches of water above the tops of those jars. And you also need to make sure you have a wire rack at the bottom of your pot so your jars aren't making direct contact with that surface, which could cause thermal shock, which could crack the jars. A few other helpful things. Can we go back? Sorry. We have a kitchen scale that's really helpful for measuring out the exact amount of fruit that you'll need so that we're using the right proportions in this recipe. We also have a food mill that's here in the back left, and we'll talk more about that, but that's important for this process too. Finally, a headspace tool. This is something important that you'll need as well. So once you have all of those gathered, you can start to prepare your jars and your canner. So you'll want to wash your jars, lids, and rings in warm soapy water. You can set the lids and the rings aside. There's no need to boil these or sanitize these. We also don't need to sanitize our jars because we're processing for at least 10 minutes. That's sufficient to cover the sanitation process. So you just need to wash them in that warm soapy water and then put them into your canner. So we'll want to keep these at 180 degrees while we're going through the rest of this process. We want these jars to be warm when we're putting that hot peach butter into them so that we're not causing the jars to crack. So this just prepares the jars for that and starts to get our water heated. So once that's ready, you'll start to prepare your peaches. You'll want to peel them, pit them, and coarsely chop them. So you should have 4.5 pounds of prepared fruit at this stage. Next, we can prepare the lemon. It's helpful to have a microplane here to collect that zest. So you'll collect the zest and all of the juice from one lemon and add that to your peaches. Once that's combined, then we can start to cook the peaches. So you'll add a 1/2 cup of water to the peaches in a large stainless steel pan. Bring that to a boil over medium-high heat. And as you continue to boil that gently, you'll reduce the heat and stir occasionally. The goal here is to get the peaches soft enough to go through the food mill. It should take about 20 minutes. Once your peaches are soft, you're going to work in batches to get them through this food mill. You could also use a food processor with a metal blade for this. Some people also use an immersion blender, but you want to make sure that you're getting a puree texture. You don't want it liquefied. The puree texture is really what's going to give it that butter quality as we continue to cook it. Yeah, you can think of it kind of like making an applesauce. And at this point, you should have 8 cups of that peach puree. Moving on, next you'll add your sugar and boil. So add all of the peaches back to that stainless steel saucepan and add your sugar in. You'll stir the sugar until it dissolves and then bring it up to a boil over medium-high heat. You'll need to stir pretty frequently during this part of the process. And once it comes to that boil, then you'll reduce the heat and gently maintain that boil, stirring frequently. Then you should test for doneness. A good way to test is to see if it holds its shape on a spoon. So you can dip a spoon. If you see it just easily running off the spoon, then you'll want to cook it a little bit more. You want that texture that's going to cling to the spoon more so. So that's when you know that it's ready. So when that's done, it's time to fill our jars. So it's helpful to use a ladle here or to use, if you have a liquid measuring cup, you can use that to scoop, which is helpful. So it's really important that you use your headspace tool to measure out a 1/4 inch of headspace. In a pinch, you could also use a chopstick and just use a ruler to mark up the chopstick. But yeah, the headspace tool is really nice. It's really important because headspace is really impactful on whether or not you get that proper seal on your jar that's going to make this safe to store on the shelf. If you leave too much headspace, then all the air isn't going to get pushed out of the jar during the process. So you won't get that proper seal. So that could lead to spoilage. If you have too little headspace, then we can have product leaking out of the jars, and that will also interfere with getting that proper seal. So you want to make sure you measure that 1/4 inch of headspace exactly. You can use that toothpick or the headspace tool to remove air bubbles. And once you remove the bubbles, it's good to do another check to make sure you're at a 1/4 inch headspace. You might need to top them off with a little bit more peach butter. Next, you want to make sure the rims are really clean. This is a sticky recipe, and that's another thing that can keep the seal from properly forming. So you can use just a wet paper towel, run it around the ring, make sure you get all those bits off. Then center your lid on the jar and screw the band down just until you're meeting that resistance. You don't want to crank it too tight, so we can still allow that space for the air bubbles to escape so we can get that proper seal. Next, it's time to process the jars in the canner. So you'll place the jars in the canner. You want to make sure that there's at least 1 to 2 inches of water above the tops of the jars. You'll bring this up to a boil, and once you reach that boil, then you'll start the timer for 10 minutes for me because I'm at sea level. If your elevation is not at sea level, then your time will need to be adjusted for altitude. We do provide those altitude adjustments in the handout that you'll get after you complete the survey at the end of class. So that's important to keep in mind. After you reach the end of that processing time, you'll turn off the heat, you'll remove the lid, and you'll wait 5 minutes just to give things a chance to settle. Then you'll take the jars out of the canner. I use a jar lifter that makes it helpful to really keep it straight up and down when you're moving the jars. You don't want to get jostling because at this point the jars likely haven't sealed yet, and that's another thing that can affect it. So yeah, as straight as possible, you want to place those jars down on a towel, on a drying rack, just something that's not making direct contact with your counter. That's another thing that could cause thermal shock. A helpful tip that I've picked up from my fellow MFPs is to use a cookie sheet. So then you can easily just pick up the tray and move the jars around as needed, especially if you're short on counter space. So you'll let these rest for 24 hours. After that, you'll test for a seal. You can press on the lid. It shouldn't be popping back. That means that it did not properly seal. For those, you can just toss them in the fridge and use those first. And then it's really important that you label your jars. It's easy to kind of lose track of what's what and when it was put in there. So, yeah, you can just Sharpie on the top or find some cute labels to make sure you know what's in there, when it was put in there, and how it was preserved. And finally, store these in a cool, dark, dry place. So now that we know how to make the peach butter, I want to share a few ways to use it. So I love to add it to ice cream with granola or cookie crumbles. I've made a few really great grilled cheese sandwiches with ham or turkey and Havarti cheese. It's great on a charcuterie board with some brie or goat cheese. If you are into baking, you can swirl it into some muffins or some cinnamon rolls. Yeah, it's great on breakfast for your oatmeal or your yogurt. Yeah, if you want just a cheat code to a more complex barbecue sauce, you can stir some in there. And my favorite thing to do recently is stir it into iced tea or lemonade, especially now that it's getting warmer outside. It's a really nice little summer drink. So that is peach butter. And turn it
Thank
back
you.
over to Deborah.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's fabulous. Just as a reminder for those who've joined us late, the program is being recorded and we do have a transcription option so that you can select that. So please raise your Zoom hand or type your questions into the Zoom Q&A. Uh,
Yeah,
and
we do have a couple questions from Jessica. I'm going to answer the first one, then Jessica, you can ask about heating the jars. Jessica asked about buying the Headspace tool. I find that locally owned hardware stores are a great place to find these kind of specialty tools. And the Headspace tool, the jar lifter, oftentimes they come as a set. But I've also found the Headspace tool on its own. Again, it was especially kitchen shop that I see them at hardware stores. So, Jessica, do you want to ask about warming the jars? That's an important question. Or I can ask it if you want. You can unmute yourself if you'd like. Okay, I don't hear her, so I'm going to ask. Jessica asked about, does the jars have to be heated to 180 degrees? Her concern is that it's hot. You know, the jars are going to be really hot taking them out of the canner when you've heated them. So, Rachel or anyone, any other MFP want to comment on that?
Yeah, so it's definitely part of the boiling water canning process that can be a little frustrating or a little dangerous having to deal with, yeah, this huge pot of very hot water. We do want it to get to 180 degrees. Again, just so when we're putting that hot jam into the jars later, it's not, yeah, causing thermal shock and causing the jars to crack. This is the temperature that's recommended for this, what we call a hot pack recipe, where we're putting a hot ingredient into a hot jar. If you're really concerned about dealing with the boiling water, I would honestly recommend steam canning, which we're going to learn about later in the program. Yeah, it's a nice alternative to, yeah, having to deal with all this hot water. But also, yeah, the jar lifter tool is helpful, so you're not really digging your hand directly into the water. They make gloves that come up pretty far also that help with reaching into the water. But yeah, I would say stay tuned for the steam canning. Oh, Deborah's showing off the glove right now.
I'm a fan of the gloves, a big fan, because I can put my hands all the time right in there, check putting the jars in, taking them out to fill them, as well as removing them once they're processed. I find it can do it with more confidence and more keeping things level with my hands. So it's my new favorite tool.
Okay, we have time for just one more quick question. The others we'll have time later on to answer. Chris, did you want to ask your question about the peel? You can unmute yourself. It's great when we have participants participate. But for time, I'll just go ahead. So Rachel, Chris's question was removing the peel. Can you leave the peel on or should you remove it?
I prefer to remove the peel for this recipe. It just makes it smoother getting through um, the food mill for me. But it's actually up to you. There are a lot of people who leave the peel on. I think Deirdre is going to talk about, yeah, leaving the peel on versus taking it off. She's a very keep the peel on person as well. It can also help to thicken your product as well. The peel has a lot of pectin, which is, yeah, the thickening agent that causes the gel set that we get. So that could be another reason if you like a thicker product to leave that peel on. Yeah, it's not a safety issue as long as you're making sure that you're cleaning those peels really well. Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay, Deborah, why don't we go ahead and move on to Deirdre?
Okay, moving on. So thank you so much for your questions. Our topic two for our stone fruit program today is plum conserve with Deirdre Davis. Deirdre. Deirdre, I think, is your microphone off?
Everyone's on. Okay.
There we go.
Hold on.
Today we have Deirdre going live. So we have two Zoom connections for going to her kitchen as well.
How's that?
I think
That's echoey, right?
yes.
Okay. Uh, I only have one on. All right.
That's fine. Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes, coming in clearly. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Deirdre.
Sure. Sorry. So this recipe is a plum conserve, and a conserve is different than a jam. It's defined as a specific type of jam that is made with multiple multiple fruits. This does sound a little odd.
Yes, we're back to echo.
Maybe I'll. Okay, how's that? Oh, is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to use the one on my phone, but it works better. Okay. So a plum conserve, sorry about that. Conserve is different than a jam because it actually it's always a mixture of fruits, and it it always has some dried fruit in it. So this one has raisins, and nuts are another common ingredient. You can make it with or without the nuts, but traditionally that's what a conserve is. You can make it without the nuts if you'd like, and it will still work and be a safe product to make. I was really interested in this because we have a really big plum tree, and they all seem to ripen very quickly and at the same time. And when they are ripe, they're really juicy and they're really delicious, but they really lack structure. It seems like when they ripen, all that any pectin it had totally breaks down. And when I have tried to make a jam or something with this, I end up more with a sauce than a jam because it doesn't have the proper amount of pectin to gel it at the right temperature. So this recipe appealed because of that, it was basically a solution to working with fruits that are soft when they're ripe and don't really hold their structure. And if you are working with something like that and you do try to make a jam, you will either end up with a runny jam, or you try to get it to that set point and you end up with an overcooked one. So this recipe has, we can go to the recipe if you want. Oh, well, this picture is basically the start of when I made it, when it starts to break down, and then when I'm about to can it up. And so it takes on that really great color from the skin. And Deborah, can you go back to the recipe so we can just, where's the recipe? Oops. Recipe. Oh, there it is. Okay. So in this recipe, you have the plums, you have the sliced orange peel, the raisins, and the orange pulp. So in terms of what works really well with this, with a soft fruit, is that you have this orange pulp. The orange pulp has both the fruit and the membrane, and the membrane has a lot of pectin in it. and will hold its structure and help with giving texture to the jam. The raisins are, well, the orange peel also has pectin. The raisins are dried, and since they're dried, they will absorb some of that excess liquid. And the raisins, being just the raisins, they will hold their shape and their structure. They won't break down, so they add bulk to it. And then the nuts are also dried, so in the process of things, they're absorbing some of that excess liquid, and they provide bulk to the recipe. So it's a really great solution, really great way to work with soft fruit. So the next recipe is, the next slide is talking about is basically, what's happening as they break down. You can see the little dots of, I decided to use, instead of sliced peel, I just diced it up. And I decided also to not put the nuts in, which is fine to do with this, to also see how it would be if it would set up just as well without it. And it did. It worked out great. So let's see. Oh, I know. I also ended up putting in a little bit of cardamom, a little spice in there, which is also fine to do. I added about a teaspoon for this whole recipe. And I started out with whole seeds, and the reason I like to use seeds because the whole seeds are going to hold on to flavor better than if you have ground seeds for a long time. And so, but since it's such a small amount, it's kind of difficult to grind it up. So when I put it in the spice grinder, I added a little bit of the sugar from the recipe to help to grind it up, and then it grinds it up really, really finely. And if you're going to be doing a whole bunch of plums or fruit, and you're going to be doing several batches, it's always good to do a test batch with a small amount of the spice to see where you're at with it, and also to see how the set is and everything, if you are planning on doing a lot. So this recipe also calls for taking it to the gelling point, and that's always a tough one to determine. It seems to be a range, and for this recipe, it was around 216 to 217, around there. But as I said, that was without the nuts, so it may come, it'll be more set probably even before that temperature if you're using the nuts. It did come out very firm at that temperature range, and which is another reason also it's good to have a test batch or the first batch, because you can figure out kind of how far you want to go, or what would be the desired thickness so therefore what is the desired temperature. This recipe also calls for using sterilized jars, which means that your processing time can be reduced. And this recipe just calls for 5 minutes of processing time because you have already sterilized the jars for the 10 minutes. And so you don't need to add that into the process. Once you're ready to can, you do have a few options in terms of putting the jam into the jars. You have kind of this traditional funnel that is pretty common. And then you have this one, it's a skirted one. It's called skirted because it has this extra little piece on here that allows you to place it on the table without it touching the sterilized surface of your, that you're using to pour into the jars or put on top of the jars. And then you also have the option of a pitcher. And I like to use this. It's kind of easier for me because I can't really see when you have these, you can't really see how far you need to go. oops, how far you need to go, down into the jar or filling it up. So I tend to like pull it off and then I'm like, oh, that's not enough. And then I gotta put a little more in. So I like this because I can see the jar and I can see where I need to fill it to. I do have one of these, so that helps to get your 1/4 inch fill space. But you also have these lines on the jars, and this top line is actually the 1/4 inch line. So when I'm filling, I will aim for that line, and then I will double check with my little handy dandy measure right there. So the next step, when you're ready to, when you are about to, or when you're ready to do the canning, as Rachel said, you can do the boiling water canning, or there is the option of what's called an atmospheric steam canner. And Deborah, can you switch over to the kitchen one? Okay. So let me. Okay. So this is what's called atmospheric steam canner. And
just a minute, Deirdre, did you switch her over, Deborah, or no?
Yes.
Oh, I just see Deirdre.
Yes. Yes.
Do you see her kitchen?
Yes.
Okay.
You guys got it? Okay, yeah. Good. And you can hear me. That's good. Okay. Okay. So this is called atmospheric steam canner. And it kind of comes in pieces like this. The idea is that you have a water reservoir on the bottom here, which you only have to fill up to the top of this insert, but not touching the jars. And so that's basically all the water that you need to heat up. And so you get this, it creates a steam, and then the steam circulates around the jars and sterilizes it that way. This size steamer, you can fit 8 jars in here. So, you would just put them like that, and up to 8 jars. So you can put one in the middle, or 7 quart jars. So the idea is that, as I said, that the steam heats up, and you have this indicator on the top that helps you just to start to gauge when you're heating up, but it's not something that you're going to use to make sure that you're at the steaming temperature. It's just to kind of watch where you're, when you're almost ready. I'm going to turn this on so we can do a little. Okay. So what you have, the way that you're going to tell is there is a little hole here, and when it gets up to temperature, which it should get pretty soon because it was just boiling, you're going to see a stream of steam coming out, and you're going to look for that steam to start coming out in a steady stream. And initially, sometimes it was used to be the indicator, but in order to make sure that it is up to temperature, it's really good to have an instant read thermometer so that you can test the temperature and make sure that it is up to the 212 degrees. So right now it's at 98, 90, 100. It's going up. Wow, that cooled down really fast. So yeah, so the idea is that the steam is circulating in there. It's circulating, so it gets up to that 212 degrees. It envelops those jars, and it safely destroys any microorganisms. So let's see, what else can I talk about while we're waiting for this? So yeah, you're pouring that water in. And once it gets up to that, the temperature, that's when you can start your timer. And you would start your timer at that time, and then for this recipe, it needs to be 5 minutes. So it's not very long. For let's see, for other recipes, you do have a limit. As you know, there is only a certain amount of water that you can put in here. So your limit to recipes are ones that go up to 45 minutes, because otherwise the water will completely it'll boil out of the steamer, and it will no longer be working, and you can obviously ruin the steamer if you do that. This is aluminum, so it's pretty light. So you have to have the steady amount of steam in here. So if you're wanting to do something that's more than 45 minutes, you may think, oh, well, I'll just pour more, open it up, pour more water in there. Well, you can't do that. Has to be closed the entire time, and the steam needs to be at that consistent temperature. So again, you also don't want to be turning down your heat because to a simmer, because then you're also not going to be maintaining that steady stream of steam at the 212 degrees, or 210 to 212. I did read that range is okay, because I realized when I was doing this that it was going to like 211, and then I double checked, and apparently that's okay too. So I think we're getting close. Room's there. Any quick questions while we're waiting?
How about adjustments for altitude?
Oh, yes, there are. You do need to adjust for altitude, and there are on the recipes. There's always a table there that you can use to look up what you need to do to adjust for the amount of time that you're going to need, a time and temperature. Okay, so let's see if I can do this. Can you see this theme or no? I'll take this out. I don't know if you can see. Okay, I see some steam. So there is steam that's starting to come out of here. So I'm gonna put this back. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So I do see steam coming out. Yeah, you can kind of see it right there. So I'm gonna test this again. And yes, it's up to 211 degrees. So at that point, you can start the timer for your 5 minutes. Once it gets to the temperature, once you have your 5 minutes, gets the temperature, you're going to turn it off, and then you're going to leave it for another few minutes, because you do have this huge amount of steam in here, and if you take it off right away, you're going to get this big, face full of steam. So it's good to kind of let it sit. Also, it helps with the difference of temperatures, so that there's less chance that something will crack from that change of temperature. And another thing is, when you do lift it off and you have this whole thing is full of steam, you want to lift it from the back, so that you also don't get a face full of steam, because steam is really hot and it can burn you. And then once you do that, and that's done, then you can lift out the jars and put them on a cooling rack, and then they will sit. Another thing, I I like to use a garden glove to take them out because again, that other thing is kind of awkward. You know, the lifter thingies. And for me, this is much easier to transfer. So that is the atmospheric steam canner. This one I got on Amazon, and it looks like it's about $70 now. They do have stainless steel ones that are, you know, a little more. But this has been fine. This has worked fine. Oh, the other thing is this recipe makes 10 jars. So you're only allowed to put 8 jars in here. So what you would have to do for this, and this is the limitation of a steam canner, you can't stack the jars or anything. And as I said, like eight of these is the most you can do. You can do less. So you would have to split it up. You would do 5 jars, do that 5 minutes, and then bring it back up. I mean, you would have to get it up to the steam again. You know, you'd put your others in and get it up to steam, and then time that again, and that's what you need to do for atmospheric steam canner. So I think that's it.
Great. Yeah, I think for time, Deborah, we do have a few questions that aren't directly related to the atmospheric canner, although please think about those because we will have some time at the end after Deborah shows us her 2 presentations.
Excellent.
Thank you, Deirdre. That was great. I use an atmospheric steam canner and I love it. No more lugging tons of hot water.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much. So next we're moving on to our third topic, apricot chipotle sauce, that I'm going to be covering for us. So it has this barbecue sauce recipe has quite a number of ingredients. And so I want to begin with sort of making sure that you assemble all your ingredients together and have them ready because what I have found is the more complex recipes can get the possibility that you might miss something. So it's better to imagine yourself to say, yes, on one of those fine cooking shows with lots of little containers to have all the things measured out for you and ready together. So when we begin, we're going to remove the apricot pits and chop them, combining the apricots in 1 cup of water in a large saucepan, and then cooking it over medium heat until tender. I puree the mixture using a food processor, but a food mill or immersion blender, all those are options. I used to do food processing more, and now I'm sold on immersion blender, especially for small quantities like this, for small batches. So then we want to set this aside and move on to finally chopping our onions and mincing garlic and then removing the stems from our dried chipotle peppers. If you're sensitive at all, even the pepper dust can sometimes tickle your nose or irritate eyes or fingers. So you want to make sure you might want to wear gloves if you are particularly sensitive because we are retaining the seeds from the peppers. You put 1 cup of water into a small saucepan and bring to a boil. Then remove that from the heat and add your peppers and cover. And we let that steep for 15 minutes. And then puree that pepper mixture in a food processor. This is still a sort of a thicker, chunkier mix, which I tend to like my barbecue sauce that way. So we're not looking for a fine pureed chop. So oops, we have the washing fruit of well if skins are not removed, but there's an optional process for removing skins where you dip washed fruit in boiling water 30 to 60 seconds until the skins loosen, and then dip them really quickly in ice cold water and slip off the skins. I'm sort of with Deirdre, I'm on team can keep skins on. Part of that is easier, but also when you're doing like a sauce, if you like something with a little more heft to it, that it's great to have the skins in. And of course, you're going to cut the apricots in half, remove the pits and any stems if desired. Then add pureed peppers and all the other ingredients together with your apricot, and then you bring the mixture to a boil over medium-high heat and stirring to prevent sticking. Then you ladle the hot mixture into hot jars, leaving half an inch headspace. Then clean the rims and threads on the jars to make sure this is another kind of sticky recipe. Uh, you center the lids and add bands, finger tighten them, and then process for 10 minutes in boiling water bath or steam canner. I'm using a to use a steam canner. I don't have that. I use the boiling water bath for this process. So, uh, the same as what Rachel talked about, you're going to remove the lid and let them cool down for 5 minutes. But then after you remove the jars, you're going to let them cool for 12 to 24 hours. Label them with the name and the date. When you store, you're going to take off the bands, so that when you actually store in the cool, dark place, the bands come off. Then, and of course, I ship to friends and family, so I keep a stock of bands to put those back on when I take them out of storage. So, how do you use this chipotle sauce? You can enjoy it with sweet. It's a very sweet, kind of tangy and smoky type preserve. It pairs well with meats, especially chicken wings, cheeses, and appetizers. So, next, we're going to move on to our final topic, apricot halves. So when we talk about stone fruit, we're coming into the feast of harvest with stone fruit for the summer. And so there are lots of different ways to preserve stone fruits. And one of the things, of course, is if you have a glut of fruit, it's fabulous if you get it from a neighbor or you have fruit trees like Deirdre and I have. You want to preserve it ready for how you want it. I said, how are you going to use it? Do you want it whole, sliced, diced, pureed, juice, skin on or off? What kind of quantity? So that if you want to freeze it, to store it in the quantities that you're going to pull out of the freezer when you want to actually do canning. Then, of course, the methods, future use, how much time and space, everything what do you have available so that if you don't have the freezer space, you may consider drying it, making just dried fruit slices or leathers, conventional oven kind of dehydration, or even freeze drying, or of course, you can can it. So that's what we're going to cover with fruit halves. I'm going to cover uh, what we do when we can halves. So you want to select firm, well-colored, mature fruit of ideal quite ripeness that you would eat as you would eat fresh. A lot of times when you're doing bulk processing, just think about if you get a big box of fruit that about an average of about 17 pounds per canner load. If you're doing, we'll make about 7 quarts, and then an average of about 10 pounds of fruit per canning load for 10 pints. And a bushel weighs about 50 pounds and yields about 22 quarts. That's about 2¼ pounds per quart. So you're going to be canning, be strong. So it's going to take a little bit, and that's where when volume, I recommend that yeah, you think in terms of quarts or definitely pints, not half pint jars. So one of the things we do in working with a lot of stone fruit like peaches and apricots, we like that beautiful color. So to prevent darkening, you want to keep fruit in ascorbic acid solution. And a low-cost solution is made with 50 milligram tablets of vitamin C that you just crush and dissolve in water. It doesn't take a mortar and pestle. It's fairly easy. I just took the back of a spoon in a small stainless steel bowl. The ratio is about 6 tablets of vitamin C per gallon of water. You can actually buy pure ascorbic acid powder. It's available for purchase. And in that case, you use a ratio of about 1 teaspoon per gallon of water. Excuse me. So You prepare a light syrup, which is really a mixture of water and sugar that's brought to a boil. So, for example, a light 10% solution of syrup for 9 pints is about 6.5 cups of water to 3/4 cups sugar. Of course, you can, and we have more syrup ratios in our handout that you'll receive when you complete the survey at the end of the class. Or you can use water, apple juice, or white grape juice instead of syrup. In this particular recipe, I decided instead of doing syrup, I packed with white grape juice. Then this particular processing for apricots, you really want to do hot packs, not raw packs. So that in order to do a hot pack, you want to bring your syrup or any of whatever packing liquid you're using to a boil, add the fruit, and then bring it back to a boil. Once you have that boil achieved, you will fill the jars with fruit immediately, cut slices down in layers. I was using a spoon to position. This is where I also recommend that you use a wide mouth jar, whether you're doing pints or quarts. This is a lot easier when you're layering fruit to do a wide mouth rather than a regular mouth jar. You're adding the hot water, syrup, or juice to fill the jars, leaving your appropriate half-inch, excuse me, headspace. Adjust the lids and process the hot pat pints for 20 minutes, the quarts for 25 minutes in a boiling water canner. Then, of course, you cool and on the process of label and then store appropriately. So this is, of course, appropriate for all kinds of uh, different fruit, whether it's apricot halves or peaches, nectarines, but I'm going to feature a note about float. So that's when produce separates and floats to the top of the jars. You can see, yes, I said I followed the recipe, but you can see that where the fruit has come to the top, and you can see that packing liquid down below. So one of the few quick tips, you want to use firm, ripe fruit, always the hot pat method to increase the possibility of avoiding float. The using light to medium syrup because the fruit is lighter. It takes a while. Sometimes it'll absorb a little bit of the sugar, so the float might go away. But then you pack as closely as possible and use a debubbler on all the jars. You want to get all that air out. And those are the strategies that will always hold you in good stead to um, avoid float. So, but even master food preservers sometimes end up with it. So, ways to enjoy apricot halves. You can bake them in cakes, puddings, or pastries. Sorry, I didn't do my perfect apricot galette recipe that looks just lovely with apricot halves of the photo. But you can dollop them over ice cream or flavored drinks such as iced teas or even a shrub, glazed meats. You can add that to a charcuterie board or just spread on toast or crackers. So let's go ahead and proceed to your questions. Uh, we have a few minutes more for questions.
Yeah, we just have a few. I'll take AK's question really quick because I just looked this up. Fruit float, it is preserved properly. So even if the fruit's a little discolored because it's above the water or the syrup, you can still eat it as long, of course, as it's not moldy or anything. One question that was brought up by a few people is, should we use organic fruit or what about removing the pesticides from the fruit? So I'll open that up to any of the MFPs who'd like to comment.
Oh, well, I have a fruit orchard, so that's why I'm on team keep the skins on, not just because it's efficient, because I'm usually processing in volume. So I don't use any sprays, so they're already um, organic. But they can get dusty, so I always wash. So a good wash. But if you, it's usually a price point to worry about. To say, are you buying organic or non-organic? And so when you can afford it, organic, and perhaps you might go ahead and then focus on removing the skins as a way to process if you are concerned about not knowing what kind of pesticides were used on the fruit that you've purchased.
Yeah, if it's commercially produced fruit, then they are required to follow regulations and document that. Deidre, go ahead. Oops, you're
Deirdre,
muted, Deidre. And Marina did mention you don't need to use soap or fruit sprays. Just use a little scrub brush if you're concerned about residues. Go ahead, Deidre, and you unmute.
Okay.
So you're still muted, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go.
That's the problem.
Yes, but there's an echo.
Try that. Okay.
Yes.
I was just gonna say that a lot of farmers markets have fruit that is not deemed organic because it is pretty expensive to do that whole process, but it is pesticide free. And I think that's a really good option so that you don't have to pay the extra price for the organic, but you are guaranteed that they don't use pesticides in their processes.
So,
And
great.
in terms of the skin that I was referring, or that Rachel was referring to before, that I would talk about, is that the skin also provides that pectin, but it also provides flavor, and plums that don't have it are a little more one-sided in their flavor. So it
Yeah.
helps to kind of make a more complex flavor. And I didn't mention that this one reminds me of kind of like
Deirdre,
cranberry sauce in a way.
Yeah, we're out of time.
We're out of time.
Oh,
So
sorry.
you want to post any suggestions in the Q&A, that would be great. So thank you so much. We want to remind you that there are many other free UC Master Food Preserver programs for online delivery available to you. We have upcoming events. You can follow us on Eventbrite at you can take a picture of the link, or the links are being put in Q&A. So we have
in the chat, Deborah.
in the
They're
chat.
all in the chat.
On the chat, thank you. So garlic preservation basics, safe curing, dehydrating, and pickling is Tuesday, June 16th, 7 to 8 Pacific Daylight Time. And then followed by all things avocados, Tuesday, June 23rd, also 7 to 8. We have a huge number of programs and past class recordings are available. So we've done deep dives just in the last few months on a number of topics that are available that will help with freeze drying, other stone fruits, cherries. So lots of rich resources available. If you have a food preservation question, you can attend our monthly Ask a Master Food Preserver Zoom program. That's the second Wednesday of each month, again, 7 to 8 Pacific time. That's coming up on June 10th. And the fourth Wednesday each month, 1 to 2, is in Spanish. You can submit a written question to our helpline at any time. Sign up for our monthly newsletter, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. So when you leave this Zoom, remember, we need your input. A brief survey will pop up in the browser. Please complete it to help us improve. But also the pop-up acknowledgement will include the link to the handout with recipes and tips for today. Thank you so much for your time and interest. Happy preserving.
Thanks, everybody. Great questions.